Hey, and welcome to the Main Contain Fishing Podcast. Man, it's been a while since we did a podcast with a guest live here on the channel and in partnership with the Paddle and Fin Network. Tonight we've got Mr. Philip from the 4-7 Lure Company joining us. You've got to go check him out at 47lures.com. This guy's got some funky alien baits that he pours. But we're going to bring him on and let him introduce himself to the world of the Main Contain Fishing Podcast and the Paddle and Fin Network. So let's get this show rolling. And welcome to the Main Contain Fishing Podcast, Mr. Philip.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here. I'm super excited to do this. I love doing podcasts, and especially when it's about fishing and things that I enjoy doing. So,
Yeah, for sure. And I was on your website earlier today and kind of looking at some of the baits, and I found one that kind of looked real funky.
Yeah.
And I see where the alien comes from on your logo now.
Which one was it?
Golly, it looks like a bad bug, like something you would see in an alien movie.
Oh, we do have those.
So I'm trying to pull up your website on my other screen.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah. I think I know. I think you're talking about the bone dancer, but
the bone dancer. Yeah.
People,
that thing looks wicked, man.
People, they see it, they don't know what to do with it, and they're like, "Man, what is this creature bait?" If you can pull up a picture of it or whatever, that would be fine. But I usually just rig it on a jig head, man. Just the same as everything else. 1/8 or 16th ounce jig head, or a hover rig is the other thing that you can do those on, which really works well.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get it pulled up here in a minute and show everybody on the show and kind of let you describe the philosophy behind this this bone dancer.
Yeah.
But we're just gonna kick it off, man, and let you introduce yourself to the podcast world of the Main Contain Fishing and Paddle and Fin.
Yeah. So
go from there, Travis. Philip.
Yeah, my name is Philip. I am the owner of 4-7 Lures. We are a bait company. There was a point in time where I was making jigs and spinners and all sorts of other stuff, but we've kind of narrowed the SKUs down and kind of, personally, I just enjoy soft plastics so much more. All the other stuff, I enjoy tying jigs and all that sort of stuff, but kind of really wanted the main focus of the company to kind of shift toward soft plastics. So that's what we've been doing. We go into production and everything, and we work with a bunch of different kayak clubs. Kayak fishing is kind of like my thing. I am a kayak fisher myself. I was into kayak fishing, long before I ever was standing on boats and fishing for bass that way. But, so we're fortunate enough to work with a bunch of people in the community and a bunch of different clubs, yourself included, and it's just great being here.
Certainly. When I made contact with you and kind of got the ball rolling, and I've got to give a shout out to Travis and his YouTube channel. Travis Does Fishing, kayak fishing, and kind of got me on to you. And I was like, well, let me reach out to you and kind of feel each other out here and see where we can go with this thing. And we've worked everything out, and you've become a sponsor for this year's Georgia Tour Kayak Series with us. So hopefully we can get some of these baits in the anglers' hands, and they'll love it, and they'll start just bugging you to death to get about 1,000 of them poured a year. So
a year. I mean, I need like 1,000 orders a month, man. We gotta flood the gates. Get me on Zoom level.
Oh yeah, I'll even pass the pack around to the local bait shops here.
Hey, do it. Yeah, let me know. I'll send you more for that.
So But yeah, how did you get into the world of pouring plastics? You kind of said that you started tying jigs and spinner baits and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But what kind of made you change your mind?
So yeah, so I was actually a woodworker in the very beginning, and the first thing I ever made was a glide bait because I was a fisher, and I just naturally gravitated toward the most expensive end of fishing, which is glide bait fishing, right? You know, it's like you got to have a $200 rod. You're throwing $150 or more on the glide baits, you know. And then I got turned on to this company, Roman Made, out of Japan, and they make handmade wooden glide baits, and that's all they do. And I was like, man, I can do this. So I started making them myself. I have a wood shop out back. Well, part of my shop is a wood shop, and then the other part is the actual production facility that I work do baits out of. But um, you know, I was like, man, this is cool. So I made a couple glide baits. I fished them. They worked. You know, it was cool. And then from there, I moved into like wooden balsa wood crankbaits, you know, and jerk baits, you know, and like smaller, you know, wooden baits, and kind of like I did some of those like old pop R's, you know, like little
Yep.
wooden poppers and stuff. Did a couple of those, and then my first foray into soft plastics was actually the ghillie shad or the flex fin that we make. Um, that was actually my first mold because I knew, you know, we pour all of those other normal plastics. I mean, we do Sinkos, of course, they're not called Sinkos, but you know, we do finesse
Right.
worms, we do Ned worms, you know, we do all of those as well. But the first mold I got my hands on was that ghillie shad or the flex pin, and I was just so amazed by it. And then I started experimenting with colors, and like, man, I can dual color this, and I can do one color on the top and one color on the bottom. And then I started, uh, you know, really in an effort to make my own baits because I was fishing a ton. You know, I started getting more molds. You know, I was like, hey man, I fish finesse worms a lot. So the finesse worm, that was like my next mold that I got. Now that's huge. I mean, the finesse worm is a gigantic seller of ours, but in general also. So and then I just kind of progressively got, you know, more and more into it. And I knew that I did not want to take the company in the direction of like the normal Cinco, the normal worms, you know. So that's where we kind of started branching out into all of these weird looking baits and like, you know, and then the logo, the original logo was not quite so involved. And then once we started moving toward all of these weird baits, we came up with the alien logo, you know, and oh, what a great way to put this out to people. You know, we make weird baits, you know, sort of like a weird alien, you know. So and then it just went from there. You know, it was just like I was fortunate enough last year to start working with a couple people that have their own YouTube channels. Travis does kayak fishing, Josh from Abide Fishing, work with those guys. They're both awesome, you know, and they were more than willing to work with me and give my products a chance and fish them and figure out if they worked, you know. And I get and got still to this day, I get great feedback from both of those guys. You know, they take the products out, they fish them. Both of those guys are more than willing to like say, hey man, this works, you know, and pass it off to someone else. And then we actually sponsored a couple of clubs last year, kayak fishing clubs, just around here though. And and from there it's just been kind of up and up, and you know, doing more stuff. And we're actually gearing up next year. Actually, we're gearing up to do a trade show, you know, and just kind of expand the reach. And I was fortunate enough to kind of have the ability to put a little bit more resources into the company. So we did things like we did some like magazine ads. We had one actually a magazine ad with Chad Hoover on the cover, you know, from KBF and everything. So yeah, I mean, it's just been really great. We've had a lot of positive feedback from the community. And then I was working with, let's see, the Wounded Warriors, St. Jude's. There's a whole list of charities and everything that I provide baits for. They do like, you know, an annual fishing event, or, you know, they take kids out or something like that. So in kind of working with that, you know, directly within the community, and then also with these kayak clubs, you know, and the response has just been really incredible. So I'm very thankful for that.
Oh yeah, certainly. You're talking about the magazine. That wouldn't be the USA Kayak Fishing Magazine, would it?
That's exactly which one it would be.
Yeah, Mr. Roy Wigden.
Yeah, Roy.
I write. Yeah, I write articles for him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He's a good guy. Yeah,
yeah,
he's
yeah. And let me give everybody a shout out that if you don't know, Roy has started his own podcast called the Kayak Cafe.
mhm.
Um, So he's got 2 episodes out right now, but I just want to kind of give a shout out to him. We finally got him into the podcasting world.
Yeah, it was
So
funny. I had that conversation with him because he owns like a full on photo studio, like that's what he
yeah,
does and everything, and like digital works and stuff like that.
right.
And I was like, man, Roy, I was like, podcast is like a totally different world. I mean, you might have a nice camera, but maybe you don't have like an HD podcast camera or like a
Mhm.
boom mic, like.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm fixing to pull your website up here, Philip, and we're going to talk about some of these unique design baits that
Yep.
that you had a mind feature for it,
Yeah.
and
An
then you got
alien
it.
mind
Yeah,
meld.
yeah. So golly, it's been a while since I'm out of the podcast realm here. So we've got the bone dancer that we were talking about earlier
Mhm.
here. Um,
Yeah.
so kind of tell me how did you come up with this design?
Man, everyone
For-
loves creature baits, and I love baits that wiggle a ton under the water. This bait also exists in Japan.
okay,
So the entire, and although mine is a little different, the core idea was already there. Mine kind of has those tassels on the end and the little points at the end, like the little balls at the very end there on the left hand side. Those are a little bit longer than the actual bait and everything, and mine has the tassels. But the design was there. Everyone likes creature baits, and I just like things that really move under the water. And if you take one of those and put it on a jig head, man, all those little ribs, they wiggle, and like the hairs, they kind of vibrate, and the feet, they kind of dance and move. So I don't know. I thought it'd be a very interesting bait. I've thrown these on jig heads, and man, bass get so offended by them that they crush them. I'm not sure what it is. I think it's probably just the fact that it's something they've never seen before. Like you throw them something like this and they don't know what it is. But I mean, I've had very large, 4, 5, even 3 pound bass. I mean, they hit these things so hard, and they're just trying to rip the whole rod out of your hand at that point.
yeah. Talking about creature baits and talking about bass, but when you're bed fishing and going through different type lures that fish hate when they're bedding, and bass in particular, they hate a lizard type bait.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people use that. Zoom's been around for ages, and everybody's familiar with Zoom and all their lizards and things like that. But I see this being probably I'm gonna probably have to buy some of these to bed fish with and kind of see how they react to it and see if
Mm-hmm.
they'll demolish it. But
I,
yeah,
I
it's
I usually test all of these baits before we release them. Like before I put them out to the public, I want to know that they can actually catch fish. So as a general rule, like anything that we come out with and everything that's on the site, I test, and I'll catch at least one fish on every single bait that's listed out on the site. So, and when I was testing these, I'm telling you, man, they hit these things so hard. I mean, they're trying to rip the whole rod out of your
yeah.
hand. So
So let me throw it out to all the listeners and all the viewers out here. If you have any questions, just put them in the comment section, and we'll ask him and get it thrown out there for the world to hear. There was another bait that caught my eye. Was
it the Q bomb or the?
Yeah,
It's the
this
Aerosphere.
let's go to the Aerosphere first.
Yeah.
It's right here. It's just so if nobody is familiar with Japan fishing or Japanese fishing, bass fishing over there, the Japanese have a hard time catching bass over in Japan. And so they've developed some of these kind of cube baits, these sphere baits and everything. And is that where you're kind of getting your
Inspiration?
yeah, your kind of inspiration? Because I see you're throwing different skirting. Is that what you consider skirting material, like maybe for a
It,
jig or a spinner bait that you use in them?
it is, but there's something specific about that skirting material. It's rubber, so it stands up underwater. So normal jig skirting material or spinnerbait material, it's made of silicone, so it
Right.
sinks. So if you take a jig and you throw it out and it hits the bottom, that skirt is just going to gently just float down to the bottom until it's just laying flat. So you're just going to have the creature bait or whatever it is that you have the jig trailer standing up, and then everything else is going to be flat around it. These, they're rubber legs and they stand straight up underwater. And actually, I think Travis can attest to this, but and I've taken these out many, many times. And when you drop them in the water, these will float just naturally. So you have to either put a free weight on the line or put like a nail weight or something into the little ball there. But it looks kind of like a comet or something. Like it'll sink and the legs will vibrate and just stand straight up. And when it hits the bottom, if it ever gets that far, they're going to stand straight up there as well.
So looking at that bait, it's got, I'm gonna call it what I call it, is a nipple representation. Is that on both ends of the bait, or is that just on the top?
Yeah, actually, if you scroll over to the other pictures, I think there's like a closer up picture of the different ones. If you just like select one, just click on one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that point, it exists on both sides, and the weird thing about that is if you hook the hook, I guess perpendicular, so that the points are sticking out, those points kind of flex as it sinks.
Okay. So how would you, Travis? You might have to get in on the chat on this for me. I'm just wondering how because you can't put a O-ring around this thing like you do a wacky rig.
Nope.
So how do you run a hook through it?
Okay, so larger hook, obviously, right? Like a 4-5/0. I use the EWG, the G-Lock worm hooks. And man, to be honest with you, I just stick it right on. I put the ball right in the crook of the hook, like right in the curve there, and then just throw it in. And I really like fishing it with a free weight on the line. You could also peg a weight. You can put a nail weight into the ball and then kind of nose hook it up top, like through that little, I don't know, poking part. So you can and you can even fish it on a drop shot too. Drop shots are super deadly with this thing. And you can just like nose hook it straight through. The weight's going to hold it on the bottom. And since these float, the thing is, if it's on a drop shot, it's going to be, floating up off of the bottom, or if it's on a free weight on the line. That's why I like that so much, because the weight will hit the bottom and then it will just kind of float up. So yeah, I think it's a combination of both of those, but yeah, you can use any real method that you want to hook it, which is, I think, part of the coolest part of it. It's not just one specific thing that you can use for it.
It reminds me of a hairball a cat spits up.
Yep. Yeah. So the Japanese, the product overseas is called the Q-bomb. And when I made this, I knew I wanted to make it different, right? And so that's where I came up. I actually had this mold custom designed. This is a, like an alien mind meld design. I hallucinated this design right here, and I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool to have ribs on one side? And those ribs will actually flex underwater, but they also lock in scent. If you use any sort of scent or anything, you can just put it right around the end there, and it'll just stay on there forever. And then I wanted to put, a point on each end. And then the difference is, the floating bait with the floating rubber legs. Man, that thing, it just flares up underwater. It's like a flower blooming or something as it sinks.
Right. So we've got a question for you, Philip, from Tim Williams.
Sure.
He says, what's the packing salt?
Yep. So we have, okay. If you buy a Cinco, that's going to come with salt mixed into the plastic, right? Because that's how you use floating plastic, and then you use a bunch of salt, and that's how you get that Cinco, bob as it sinks, right? So any stick bait, any manufacturer these days, they all do the same thing. It's floating plastic, and then you add a bunch of salt, and it just causes it, it's going to try and sink, but also float, and it just flexes as it goes under. Now, any other bait that we make doesn't usually come with salt. Because typically, if you're fishing a finesse worm, you probably don't want salt in it. Now, If it were by request, I don't have that as an option on any of the things. But I mean, if someone were to reach out to me and say, "Hey, I really want this bait with salt," say, "All right, whatever, that's fine. We can do that." But every other bait I make does not have salt in the mixture, and it's going to be floating plastic, which means that you're going to have to throw it on some kind of jig head or something to that effect. Which 9 times out of 10, I mean, a finesse worm is a great example, or a speed worm, Ned rig, Ned worm. All of those you're throwing on some kind of weight in the first place anyway. So, but I do put salt in the bags and my guys when we're packaging, and all that does is it helps the baits not stick to each other. So typically when you take these baits out, because they come out of a big injection mold, like out of a press, they're going to be super hot, and you go through a curing process with them where they have to air cure to fully settle into their form and everything. If you just take those baits and just grab a handful of them and put them into the plastic bag, you're going to have just a heck of a time moving the worms around with each other. They're going to rub on the plastic of the bag, and it's just a terrible experience. So what we do is we just take a little bit of very fine salt. I actually use bovine salt. I don't know any farmers out there are familiar with that, but it's super available, 50 pounds for like $8, and it's really fine. It'd be like what you would mix in with hogs if you had them as part of their dietary supplement, right?
Yeah.
So we take that, we sprinkle it on the baits, and then we package them. And that way it just provides a nice, clean experience. I can get the baits, my guys can package them without like the baits trying to fight each other and without tails. And the other thing is having a little bit of salt in the package when we're talking about, very sensitive tails and stuff, like on a finesse worm, you wouldn't want the tail to like rip off. Right in the bag. I mean, how many times I have definitely bought fishing baits where I go buy a bag of the baits and you open it up and like one of the tails is ripped or something,
Oh, for sure. Just like a curly tail worm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we have those too. So that little bit of salt actually makes it makes it just a little bit easier to get all that stuff in the bag and situated. So that salt, as soon as you rig it up and throw it out, it will dissipate off of it like the first time it's in the water. It's not in the plastic at all. So yeah, I mean, unless it's by special order or anything, the Senkos are really the only baits that we would have that are full of salt.
Right. So let's talk about. Let me bring this. It's called a wiggle rib wacky worm. I kind of like this design as a wacky, and I'll tell you why.
Yep.
Just looking at it in my opinion, just looking at it on the internet is one, I like where the egg sac is, what they consider the egg sac of a worm.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like I would say the little tentacle on the ends. I think it would give it a little bit more kind of action when it's falling as a wacky rig does. So that's just my opinion, but now I want to go to the expert that made this worm.
All right, so I have been throwing the same wacky rig worm for like 20 years. Like I'm that guy. I show up to kayak fishing tournaments with like 13 rods. I got every freaking bait and every rod combination you can think of, and I literally throw a finesse worm and a wacky worm everywhere. Like that's all I ever throw. I don't even know why I bring the other rods, but I knew, it's not enough just to make a regular stick worm. Everyone has a stick bait, right? They all look the same. And as a wacky worm fisher, I kind of like had this idea that I wanted to make something that flexed more as it sunk. And those ribs, that's actually what it allows it to do. It allows it to catch more water and move more water as it sinks. So I reached out to a custom designer again and had this custom made. I worked with the guy, like, I am by no means like a CAD expert, but there are some people that are, software design and all that sort of stuff is their forte. So I worked with a guy, he designed it. I just told him, I said, hey, like this is what I want. This is what I'm thinking of. I kind of want it to be a little bulbous at the ends. I want ribs around it, and then he sent me proofs, and then he would print up a couple actual worms and send them to me, and hey, fish, he's like, is this what you want? And then we kind of worked through the process together, and we ended up getting the wiggle rib, and and I knew I wanted a flat section in the middle so that you could rig it wacky, right? Doesn't really make sense to have a wacky worm that's doesn't have a middle section that you can work with, right? So
right.
But yeah, you're right, man. That tentacle on the end, man, and the little bulbous parts. I mean, they just flex so much as they're going down into the water. It's pretty incredible, actually.
Yeah. Going back to a comment when we had them, I guess the sphere. Is that what you call it?
The aerosphere, yep.
Yeah, the aerosphere.
Mhm.
Travis said you can put two together and just call it the hairy nuts.
I'll cast it up in like a tan color, with like some black thread coming through it.
You always have one jokester in the chat, right?
Of course.
Yeah. Nah. So yeah, it's so kind of another one that caught my eye just searching through your is the Ned rig has become a standard now among especially
Everyone.
finesse fishermen. Yeah. When the
Everyone.
fish are finicky and things like that, but is your Ned bug and
Mm-hmm.
and let me throw it up here on the screen so everybody can see it. It's almost like a standard Ned rig, but you've added this rubber.
Yep,
strands
rubber
again to it.
skirting. Yep.
Yeah.
And I actually, so I have a really crappy YouTube channel. There's like maybe 2 videos on it. It's literally just like test baits. Like I just take a video of me like testing baits, and that's one of them. And man, if you put it on like a 16th ounce jig head or even a Ned head, like a Ned head jig or whatever, those things, they just have so much movement. It kind of just glides through the water, and those rubber legs, man, it looks like a bug or something. Like it looks like maybe legs or something as it kind of floats through the water.
Right.
And man, again, that's another one. I've been super effective on those. I mean, 16th ounce jig head, take that and just rig it like you would a Ned, drag it along the bottom. And man, that thing will stand straight up on the bottom. And then the legs will kind of arc up from the sides, so it kind of looks like a little bug or something, like bugging down. That'd probably be, again, really effective for bed fishing,
Right.
Because it looks like something that's trying to, take their, their eggs or something.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of the baits that kind of caught my eye. Where's this cube at? I want to kind of throw this cube up there because this a cube bait. There was a Japan angler on the Elite Series that won a tournament. I can't remember his name.
I can't remember his name either, but he won one of the Bassmaster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Should be called the Gambler's Dice. If you sort by newest there on the side there, you should be able to. It'll be up there in the first 10 or something like that.
Gambler's Dice.
There you go.
And what really caught my eye was the pink, because I tell you the reason why, because on the Ageechee River, which is just about a mile to my left in here where I live at, is the only really colors that you need is black, white, and pink.
Pink works. Pink works. Yeah. I don't know, like anyone that doesn't throw a pink bait, you're missing out. You can literally throw a pink anything. I used to throw a pink Cinco all day long, and you catch fish on them all day.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
there is something about the pink when it falls through the water column, or even on top of the water, that just it catches the fish's, I guess, vision better. I talked to a guy at iCast. I think he's got a YouTube channel and Instagram. He throws nothing but pink stuff, and he takes his top water frogs, and just dips them in the pink, like a paint type deal for baits. But yeah, it's
these things are deceptively small too. I mean, this is like truly finesse. Like this is for drop shot fishing is where they're so effective on a drop shot. I mean, and they're deceptively small. I mean, typically we're talking about like a size 2 hook on a drop shot. You're going to use like a smaller hook, and these are going to be, fitting right into the crook of that. I mean, they're very tiny. And again, those rubber hairs, man, they fling, they move, they kind of like vibrate with the underwater currents and stuff. So it makes like it just moves water in a very weird way, and I definitely think that, you know, they've gotten crushed. I mean, in my testing they get crushed, but yeah, pink works. I throw a pink fluke sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that works, because it doesn't look like any sort of baby fish or anything, like typically you're thinking like you want like a shad
color, or a
but
bluegill color, or
yeah, but they crush it. I mean, it's it's effective.
So how big are these cubes? How big would you say they are?
I think they're about a fourth of an inch square, so it's like a fourth of an inch on each side.
Yeah,
they're very, very tiny. I mean, it's probably no bigger than like a salmon egg. Like if you did any sort of like trout fishing or anything like that, or like bead fishing, it's probably no bigger, maybe slightly bigger than that. It's true finesse.
I wonder if they might work for big brim.
Yeah, well, I mean, a brim can bite at it, so I think you just have to use I don't know, a smaller hook. I don't know, like a typical size 2, hook is already bigger than a brim's mouth typically. So
yeah,
but yeah,
wow, yeah, I saw them as well. I was like, that's kind of interesting,
The other one is the hex worm. If you pull that up, that's like that's the newest one, and that's like Ned specific, 100%.
Yeah, we'll get that too after the commercial break here, Philip. We'll go talk some more about your baits and what designs you've got going on your website. And but yeah, let's cut to a commercial break. Everybody kind of grab a drink, fill up your drink. So just stand by and we'll be back right with you.
There's a world out there waiting to be explored. But true freedom requires a different kind of power. Power that's reliable, sustainable, and built to keep up with your adventurous spirit. Wattcycle provides strong and stable power.
It's a really good deal. These are great little batteries. They have high temperature, low temperature sensors.
Really high quality cells come in these things now.
So far, so good. Everything seems to be efficient. Well, it did everything that it said it would do.
Wattcycle's lithium iron phosphate batteries utilize advanced battery management and thermal control technologies to ensure exceptional performance and reliability. We only use premium grade A cells, selected for their high energy density, superior safety, and impressive cycle life of up to 15,000 charges. Wattcycle is proud to serve over 300,000 customers, empowering homes, businesses, and communities around the world with sustainable energy solutions. Our batteries are engineered to provide clean, efficient power for your renewable energy systems. Wattcycle versatile power solutions for every adventure. Experience freedom on the road. Stay out on the water longer. Hit the greens with confidence. Secure your home's energy needs. Maximize your solar potential and more. Wattcycle Power Infinite.
And thank you for Wattcycle for being the official power of SCG KBF and the Men Contain Fishing podcast. They are my title sponsor for this year for the Georgia Tour Kayak Series. So if you are willing and wanting to win some great prizes, come visit us on the Georgia Tour Kayak Series. My schedule is on the website at scgkbf.com. And you can find some other information there as well. If you're fishing Georgia, you can find the Anglers Hub, and it will tell you good information. This year, we're going to add some more to it. We're going to add some hot spots, some things we've caught fish on certain lakes and ponds and community areas. So y'all stay tuned, and we're going to come back with this second half here and get Philip to talk about some more of his 4-7 lures of his alien-based mindset here. And let's bring him back on. Hey, Philip, and welcome back to the second part of the show.
Appreciate it. I had just enough time to grab myself some drink. So
Um, let's talk about this right quick, man. This crazy weather. Did y'all get snow up there?
we did. We got 5 inches, and it's funny because I mean we haven't had snow in like 5 years. I'm in North Carolina, based in North Carolina,
Yeah.
and I don't know. You guys in Georgia, you certainly know about heat. But during the summers up here, I mean, we're talking 110 degrees. It's very, very hot. But yeah, we got 5 inches of snow, and I'm not in Raleigh, which is the capital city or anything like that. I'm actually about an
Right.
hour south of that, right in the middle of some farmland, and we don't. My county doesn't have a plow or So I mean, it was like my wife went to work today, but other than that, I mean, that was like the only set of tire tracks that we saw. And it's like
Yeah.
my father actually in St. Simon's Island, south of you, they got
Yeah.
snow, and that's the first time they've had snow since 89.
Oh, wow.
1989 was the last time they actually had snow down there.
Yeah. So I had to work last night, and it started sleeting. It sleeted and it sleeted,
Ugh.
and then it came a snowstorm for about 2 hours straight, and I was like, "Nah, the South Georgia boy ain't made for this stuff."
You're like, that's why I moved to the south, man. What's going
Yeah.
on?
Yeah. So, what city do you live here in? Out just south of Raleigh.
Fuquay Varina.
Okay. I used to have I've got an old college buddy that used to live in Siler City up that way, but
Mhm.
I think he's moved more to the Durham area. So
It's about 2 hours. Siler City is about 2.5 hours to the west of me.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna bring up this hex worm that we were talking about before the break, and kind of let you talk about this hex worm here that you got going.
This was another one that I've kind of slowly come around to throwing Ned worms. I guess it's maybe a natural progression of a wacky fisher, right? So, and this one, I don't know. I just came up with this idea, and buddy of mine was printing molds and made it work. So that's what we came up with. And the cool thing is you can separate it. Like you could pinch those little sections off. But again, that stands up on the bottom. It flexes. It has a very weird. It's not like a normal worm flex though, because it's jointed. So it's kind of like I don't know, more of like a jointed flex as it sits on the bottom. It's kind of super weird, super interesting. In the coming up, we're actually coming out with a core shot version of that, which will be a different color on the outside and a different color on through the center. So we're going to have that coming up. It's not out yet. It's getting ready to be released, and then we're actually going to do a 5.5 inch version of that same thing.
So I think Travis was saying that he's been throwing it on as a jig trailer lately. Which I can see that as a jig trailer with that, you got a little fat body into a skinny tail, and you're bumping that jig across the bottom. That tail is just
that's exactly what it's doing.
Getting that attention that because you've got that skirt flared out on that jig and it's standing up. So
I think if you used rubber legs on a jig, which we can make those too. If you were to use rubber legs on it, it would be everything would be standing up, man. I mean, you'd almost be hopping like a little creature bait or something along, because the legs would be all flared up, and then the jig trailer would be kind of twitching along.
See, I this is the first time I've ever heard this about silicone versus rubber in jig making, spinner bait making. Because I always thought when you threw a jig out there, that stuff it kind of flared open, but it just kind of sat there on the bottom and kind of floated up in the water column.
Silicone skirts on a regular jig will just sink. They will, kind of gracefully float, but like when it hits the bottom, it's just going to relax to a point where the hairs are just on the bottom and they're just
gonna flare out more or less.
Yeah. Okay. It's like I don't know, a flower with the melted petals or something like that. Like the legs will just kind of sit askewed of the actual bait that's on the thing there. But yeah, we use rubber legs. which is actually there are not many companies at all that you can find that use rubber legs on anything. But yeah, we are fortunate to work with actually it's weird. It's a rubber supplier. I mean, that's his entire business is supplying rubber to various things, so we get them to cut us big, long. I mean, these things come in gigantic spools, I get like a 20-foot spool or whatever, and it's all wrapped up. And then he cuts it and everything. So it's like, we just come along and then cut the smaller sections that we end up tying with jigs or whatever it is that we're using it for. So I did see a question though, that something about 8 or 10 pound line or something. Hold on, let me see.
Let me scroll. Oh, right here, John Wilson. He says, so the cubes and the eggs, do you go smaller leader line, say 6 to 8 pound?
You can, but let me tell you my philosophy on this. I am 10 pound Yozuri braid. I use the high vis yellow. I fill the entire spool up with that. That's like backing line all the way up to main line. And then I do about 8 feet of 8 pound. And then I've recently been using the Yozuri nano braid. It's like, it's fluorocarbon and braid mixed together.
Right.
So I go 10 pound braid, 100% all the way out of the spool, and then about 8 feet or 10 feet of an 8 pound leader. And that's how I fish everything. I mean, man, there's nothing I don't throw on that combination right there. Every single one of my, except for like gigantic glide baits, which obviously can't accommodate that kind of weight. But
right.
Yeah, I fish everything on that, and that combination is absolutely deadly, especially with lighter baits. I have like a very specific wacky rod, and a wacky worm weighs, like less than, it doesn't weigh anything. We're talking, 1/8 of an ounce, 1/16 of an ounce maybe. And I can fling that thing an absolute mile with that combination. And the same goes for all of those finesse baits. The dice, same combination, 10 pound braid to 8 pound line. And if you're not using nano line, use like fluorocarbon. I have a couple buddies that use mono. I don't really know the difference between mono. Supposedly it's supposed to float or something like that.
Yeah, I think
just use fluorocarbon.
Yeah, I really think the mono world is just, the mono world's kind of died off since this fluorocarbon's come about, and all this braid, braid to leader and things like that.
Yeah, I think the best thing about mono is that you could buy like 100 yards for 10 cents. So it's like, it's very conceivable if you're using it as like backing line or even leader line. I mean, they say mono floats and fluoro sinks and all this stuff, but I mean, realistically, when you're throwing these baits, if you got a weight on the line or you got something, I mean, it's going to go where you're going to want to put it anyway. The line, I don't feel like is going to make that much of a difference. But yeah, Yozuri, and again, that's a Japanese company. It's just something about those Japanese companies, their baits. Hey, even in my personal life, I know you can't see it right now because I'm in business attire, but I am covered head to toe in like Japanese tribal tattoos and stuff. So something about it. But I'm telling you that Yozuri line, that high vis 10 pound line, probably the best braid I've ever used. It's so smooth. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, which on my spinning stuff, I use braid to fluorocarbon, and of course on all my punching gear and heavy cover stuff is braid strictly.
Mm-hmm.
But fluorocarbon's the way to go. If I want a crankbait, you could take a crankbait that dives 8 to 10, and you can back down, or you can back down your fluorocarbon to say 10 pound fluorocarbon and throw that crankbait a mile and get another a half to a foot of depth out of that crankbait.
Right.
So I don't go no heavier than 12 pound test because I just don't fish a whole lot of stuff that needs 17, 20 pound fluorocarbon.
I have 3 exceptions. So I have 12 pound test straight fluoro on my jig rod, right? So I don't throw a lot of jigs anymore, but there was a time where I only threw jigs, right? So, and that's also why, like the hand tying and all that sort of stuff with the business. Man, I've probably thrown a jig more times than most people on this planet, right? So 12-pound on that, and that's a bait caster. That's one of my 3 bait casters, and then super heavy glide baits. So glide baits, I've got a 1 to 5 ounce rod. You get like a large glide bait. I mean, a typical weight is like 4 ounces, for like a mid-sized one, right? And then I have an even larger glide bait rod that is 5 to 14 ounces. And I actually have glide baits that weigh that much. And then they make even heavier glide baits. So those are the 3 that I make exceptions for. I have all fluoro on all 3 of those. The jig rod is 12-pound. The light glide bait is 17-pound. And then the heavy glide bait is 25-pound. All bait casters. Everything else is a spinner.
I haven't got into the large glide bait fishing yet. I guess
I think it's an extension of small glide bait fishing. Like if you throw like a mag draft or any of the, I mean, heck, you could even go with the what's that one,
the coal shads,
the trick shads, and all those. I mean, if you throw like a normal sized glide bait, all the large glide bait is just an extension of that. It's just it's an even more exclusive, larger profile. And man, believe me when I tell you, you'll learn the value of patience if you're glide bait fishing, but especially large glide bait fishing. I mean, I've got glide baits that are 22 inches long. I mean, we're talking like throwing like a small shark. You know what I mean? So
you must have been hanging around Chris Zaldane too much.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to say, he was actually one of my large inspirations for when I first started everything, as far as like custom making glide baits. I really wanted to send him a glide bait and be like, hey, I made this for you. Like, just throw it. I don't even care,
Yeah.
I never got around to it, but yeah.
So I've got another bait of yours. It's called the Mud Mite 3-inch.
Okay.
And I see why smallmouth, because these things are known. I don't even know what they call the little physical insect.
Hellgrammites.
Hellgrammites. There you go.
Yeah, hellgrammites. Yep, they're little like centipede, millipede things or something, but they go underwater and they burrow under rocks. They're the weirdest little creatures ever. But these 100%, you got to throw these on light, like small jig heads. 16th ounce is usually. I am almost 100% of the time. Most of anything I throw is either 16th ounce or 8th ounce. Like I am almost never going up to 4th, quarter ounce, unless if I'm throwing a jig, I'm doing like half ounce, but because you want to hit the bottom. But so 16th ounce or 8th ounce is where I would stay with those. The Hellgrammites, they are freaking deadly for river fishing, man. We got the Cape Fear River like right in my backyard. And man, I've taken my kayak out there tons. And I'll tell you what, man, you take that. I mean, again, it just looks like a little tiny bug, you know, and you take that and you just throw it up on the shallows and reel it in. I've really had a lot of success throwing that like on like a rocky transition point. Like, if you see like kind of like a sloped bank leading into like a deeper area, you just like throw it shallow and just reel it deep, and it just looks like a little bug, just like doing its thing all the way down there, and man, they get hammered. Those things are deadly. Smallmouth too. I mean,
yeah, I've always heard smallmouth bass will eat them things alive.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually probably one of the most popular. Like, it'll catch a fish of any species. I've caught catfish on those things. I mean, catfish will bite at anything, but especially if you're in a river or something, it's like whatever's around. But yeah, I've caught catfish on those things. 30-pound catfish, and it's like hitting a little tiny bug, and you're like, man, you couldn't think of something better for a better meal, you just got to get this little tiny bug. So
yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to try them, because I got I've got a series that I'm fixing to kick back up called the Backwater series, and it's going to these smaller creeks, just something off the main run of the river. Just some cypress lakes, cypress ponds, stuff like that. I might have to get me some of these and try them out in them little creeks. And
I think that's the best that fishing has to offer, is those little backwoods ponds, man.
Yeah.
I actually caught my PB out of like a little backwoods pond that no one even knew existed. It was like by a construction site, and it had like this old rundown dock, and I just buzzed a pop R by it. 6.5 pound bass jumped out of the water and grabbed it. I mean, it took me for a ride,
Yeah.
But I think those little tiny creeks and little like places that no one, that's where the monsters are, honestly. That's where the fish just lay around. They get fat forever for years and years and no one ever fishes them, and then you come by and you throw something to them and it's just like, man, it's on,
Yeah. We have a species in this Ogeechee River. It's in most of the rivers on the south part of Georgia. It's called a red breast brim, but
Not like a specific type of brim.
yeah, they got a real red breast. The male has a real red breast. The female has a kind of a yellowish red. But these things are, man, people come from other states to fish in this river over here just for them.
Wow.
And something like that may be on top water, just popping it like a top bug or something like.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking out of my head.
I mean, I make them on floating, with floating plastic. It's all floating. So I mean, like if you were just to not put a weight in it or anything like that, a light wire hook, you could probably buzz it right across the top of the water, and it wouldn't be, be an issue.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, man, it's a golly. You got, I could spend my whole paycheck on your website.
Well, I encourage you to do that. It's never too early to buy Christmas gifts for yourself, right? I mean,
that's right. That's right.
I saw Travis asked a question there. Can we expect some soft plastic frogs this year? Yes. The answer to that is yes. We have that in development. The thing with a frog, though, is that I think that frogs without kicking legs are useless. So, most like the Zoom frog, right? The legs are flat, and like, yeah, it kind of like bubbles along the top of the water, but like I want it to kick, right? Like I want there to be a flare on the legs, and to develop something like that takes a lot of testing and like a lot of printing up a mold and saying, oh, does it work? And then printing out the bait and then going and fishing it and being like, man, is this actually the action that I want? And like, so yes, we will have frogs coming out this year, just not yet, but they're in development. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Frog fishing. Ooh.
I never got into frog fish. I know some people swear by it. You can throw it any time of year. You can throw it anywhere, and fish will smash it. And man, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm just not patient enough to do that. Like I'll throw a walking stick bait, topwater walker all day long, man. In fact, I had some custom 8-inch topwater walkers. Well, I made them first, but I had them made by like a more professional dude. That's all he does, right? And he made like these custom 8-inch walkers, and they're just like ghost shad colored. Man, you buzz an 8-inch walker across the top of the water, and something's gonna bite at it,
Yeah, that's like them. I like to throw the junior spooks, especially on feeding fish and lake points. Man, you throw that spook out there and start, man.
Popping it. Yeah, me and my wife a couple of years ago, we went to Texas for one of our anniversaries. We try to go somewhere every year, just to relax for a week. And we went out to Texas, and I, being a fisher, I was like, Texas, boy, this is like the land of giants, So we like the first thing we did was charter a bass boat. We were like, who's going to take us out? Who's taking us out to the lakes? We're catching giants, And he put me on this. Toward the end of the day, it was probably 2:00 in the afternoon. And boy, it was 120 degrees outside. Easy. I mean, it was scorching. And he put a topwater walker in my hands, for the last several hours of the day and everything. He was like, just walk it all day. Like, you're going to get something. And like, man, I mean, sure enough, I had a 6-pound bass jump out and grab it. But man, there's just something special about a walking bait. The poppers are great, but man, a walking bait is just, it's incredible.
Right. So let's go talk about this frog that you got in your mind that you might make here So is it going to be a true, like a hollow body type?
No, it's going to be a soft plastic.
So okay.
Yeah. The hollow body frogs, man, they are so much harder to make than like you would look at one of those and you're just like, oh man, this is probably easy, but it requires like literally an injection mold press for plastic, which is, and I know that sounds weird because I use injection mold presses for plastic for this, but it's a totally different type of plastic, totally different type of injection. the plastic that they're using burns way, way hotter. We're talking like 600 degrees because it's like polyurethane plastic.
Yeah.
Like it's a thicker, you know, and then, you know, not only do you have to get the body and everything, you know, those double pronged hooks, that's a whole other thing, you know, and threading those through the bait and all that sort of stuff. And quite frankly, I mean, I think that I can get the similar type of action out of a hollow body frog. I mean, you can't get legs to kick out of a hollow body, right? Because you just have like, you know, hairs off the back.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. For me, you know, it's definitely about the action of the bait. You know, like a lot of that thought process goes into the development of all these baits. You know, it's like, how can I get this? Like the craws we make. Man, I know everyone uses, you know, every other craw under the sun, but I feel like the ones that we make have a whole lot more claw action. And if you ever get the chance to throw one, you'll see it's because we designed, there's like thicker ridges of plastic along the edge of the claws. So it adds weight to just the tips. So that way, as it's moving, it's, you know, it's flipping those tips.
Right.
But the same sort of thought process goes into all of these baits, and it's really about the action. So like I take this stuff out, I test it, my guys test it, we work with it. I mean, there are some things that have been in development for like a year, and you know, I keep sending it back because there's a specific part of it that I want changed because I want a different action or something to that effect. So with these frogs, they're going to be all plastic, and we're basically going to follow the same sort of principle as the craws, which is going to be a thicker amount of plastic around the legs to add weight, because man, that's just going to cause it to kick. Yeah. And we'll have those probably, we're like nearing the end of development and everything. So I think probably the next 6 to 8 months, it'll be before the end of the year for sure. I'll probably get them out like, you know, right July or something, you know, right in the hot weather when people love to throw frogs.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I used to throw a lot of frogs when I was in college. We had a pond on the college that I attended, and we'd go down there and either throw a buzz bait or throw a frog, and it was lights out. Like, especially on full moon nights, man, ain't nothing like hearing that kaboosh come up.
Yeah, we used to just do, it was a jig or a worm for me. Yeah. Like even as I was a kid, I mean, well, you know, and the other thing is like that's what we could afford. You know, it was kind of more like one of those like we didn't have, you know, all the everything that we possibly could have, you know, needed to have in the world, you know, and you know, I mean, that was what we got. You know, it's like you go get a pack of worms. It's like, you know, $1 or $2, whatever it was, you know, and then you throw those worms, you know, or jigs. That was the other thing that I used. The spinners, you know, those were around like forever.
Yeah, I used to throw when I was a kid, I remember going to my dad and granddaddy's tackle box and getting an old man worm out. The old man. Jelly worm.
Do you remember it was like a finesse worm, but it had 2 hooks in it? And it had a bead on the top. I don't remember who made it, but it was
they still make them. They still sell them things at Walmart down here.
Yeah, they do. And I don't remember who makes them, but it had a double hook, like one on the top and one. Maybe it might have been even 7 inches.
It might be Cream.
Cream, that's right. Yeah,
Cream might have made it.
Yeah, and then it had like a bead at the top, and those things, man, you could throw those all day long. You catch fish on them all day long.
Yeah, too. And I think another company kind of came out with a larger one, but it had a spinner on the front of it.
Oh, like a propeller or something?
Like a little propeller.
Man, you know, I love the ingenuity. I love seeing new companies do new things because that's what we're trying to do. But sometimes I think it's too much. Like now I'm like, man, you're taking a worm and you're adding a propeller to it. Like, what are we gonna come up with next?
Yeah.
Where do we go from there?
and I tell you this right quick before we start getting to the end of the show here, Philip, is I went to ICAST last year, and just walking through there and looking at all these bait companies, all these product companies, and you're sitting going, look, folks, we don't need that much fishing tackle. Like, we've already got enough. But these companies are coming out with a new, this 2.5 crankbait will, you know, it wiggles a little bit more on the back end. And I'm like,
they got to keep ahead of the game, you know. That's how you keep like I have some friends that are so like in the bait making world, and a couple of them have their own companies and things of that nature, and you know, you got to stay ahead of the curve. You know what I mean? Like you can't, because the minute that you just start doing the same product that everyone else is doing, or you stagnate and you don't have something else to offer people, that's the minute no one's going to care anymore. And you're going to, and I mean, sure, you can keep doing, marketing, you can do trade shows and all that sort of stuff, but like you'll reach a plateau. Like you'll reach a point where that's as big as you'll get because you can't accommodate what it is that people are looking for. And especially when it comes to like new products. I mean, fishers, I guess in general, are curious people. You know what I mean? Like, what does it take for one of us to take a kayak out onto a river? And it's like you see a little tiny cove or like a stream or something you've never seen before. What are you going to do? You're going to take that kayak right down that cove. You're curious about it. You want to see all about it, right? And it's the same sort of thing with product. It's like everyone's curious about what the next thing is going to be. Does it catch fish? How well can it catch fish? So I think that's actually kind of part of, I don't know, the enjoyment of all of it too, is like, creating the brand and being engaging to your audience, like offering people different options than they would normally see. I mean, at least for me, that's part of the fun of it,
Well, and just like your business, you're a small company, and I'd rather support a smaller company than trying to represent Rapala or Berkeley or whoever. That way, I can pick up the phone and call you directly and say, hey, Philip, this thing needs to be changed. It needs to have more kicking action on the back, or the tail needs to wiggle a little bit more on the chatterbait, things like that. Because you get in these bigger companies, you're just a number to them. You're just, and that's it.
I mean, look, everyone's thrown Zoom. I mean, I've thrown Zoom, for 100 years, but at the end of the day, you're right, man. Like, they're not going to be ones to notice anyone's generosity. You know what I mean? Like, when you're buying from me or smaller companies, I mean, you're helping me, proceed through life. You know what I mean? Like, you guys' difference is felt to me, and you're right about it too. Like, you can directly contact me. And like, even if there's an email through the website or the phone number, like, I have people that work for me, but I'm going to be the one to pick that up. Like, I'm going to be the one to communicate with you. So if there is an issue, hey man, here's the issue. And every single company and every person has always had issues. And I've had a few. I mean, I had a bad batch of plastic from the manufacturer. Actually, we actually sent out a bunch of baits, but they cured and they were cloudy, like they weren't clear at all. So it just messed up all the colors and everything. And I had a bunch of people that were a little pissed off. And I just said, hey, look, give me your order number. We'll remake the order, right? I'll send it right back out to you, right? And that's exactly what we did. And you don't have that ability with larger companies. You can't call Zoom. If you call Zoom and say, hey, I bought a package and one of your worms was messed up, they're going to say, well, tough cookies. Good. That's nice. Spend more money with us. Maybe in the next pack, it won't be messed up.
Right.
So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then also the direct feedback is also really awesome.
Right. So, Philip, tell everybody all your socials where they can find you, and your website as well, and things like that. That way we can get the word out about 47 Lures.
Yeah, so the website is just www.47lures.com. I actually own that domain name. I bought that domain name long before the website was ever even published. But so yeah, 47lures.com. That's where you can go. You can order any of the baits. I definitely prefer you order through the website. I mean, look, if you need something custom made, shoot me an email, get in contact. I'm more than happy to do it for you. But just realize, like, through the website, there's things like shipping and tax and all the minute things about a business that no one ever is worried about,
Right.
And it's a lot easier for me to manage too, because it comes into an active queue. I can see it. I'm like, okay, here's my list of orders and all that sort of stuff. But by all means, if you need something custom made, you let me know, get in contact. Facebook, Instagram, it's all 47 Lures. We have a Facebook, it's 47 Lures. It is the alien logo. And then it's the same for Instagram. It's all exactly the same thing. There is an X or Twitter or whatever that is. But to be honest with you, that hasn't been active nearly as much as the other two, because man, I just can't handle that much social media, to be perfectly honest with you. So, it's like, there was a point where I wasn't handling all of the social media, but now I am. And I'm also still working a day job and all that sort of stuff. So having that many social medias all at the same time and keeping up with all of them and all that stuff, it's just a lot, man. So, and then I'm also, like, I'm managing the website, I'm managing the orders, like any sort of if we release a new product with new pictures and things of that nature, I'm the one that's, managing it on the back end of the website and that sort of thing. So a lot goes into it, but, definitely if there's anything that anyone needs, you want, I mean, feel free to go browse. There's a whole web store with all sorts of products and stuff. Like I said, if you need anything custom, feel free to reach out.
Okay. There you have it, folks. Straight from the 4-7 lure.
The alien's mouth.
Yes, the aliens, worm, whatever. Y'all have got to check out his packaging, though. It is. And my man recycles Amazon boxes. This shit.
Hey, well, I mean, can you blame me? I mean, the price of packaging. Have you seen it? Have you shipped something recently? Because man,
no, but I've got to get some packages out here shortly.
The packaging I'm actually incredibly proud of, because we worked with a graphic designer to design that entire package. And when you get, it's not just a plastic bag with a sticker on it. Like a lot of these companies, it is actual, like pressed printed packaging. I made the joke to my wife actually the other week. I said, man, when I started a lure company, I never figured I'd spend so much money in packaging. I mean, literally, it's like bags, swim baits. Oh, you got to have a clamshell. Grubs. Oh, anything with a tail on it, got to have a clamshell. So.
Yeah. So, if y'all don't mind, go over and like his socials, and grab some of his baits off the site and fish with them and give him some feedback, things like that. That's where products are made, is by the consumer giving feedback. But yeah, I'm gonna throw you back in the green room. We're gonna close out this show, Philip, and I'm gonna bring you back on and talk with you just a minute or two, and then let you get you back to your family. Okay, sir.
Good. Appreciate it.
Hey guys, thank y'all for joining us here on the podcast tonight. We man, it's been a while. Like I said in the beginning, we got to get back in the swing of things for 2025. If you haven't yet, go over, check out the website, scgkbf.com. There's a lot of tournament information going on. We've got 4 different type tournaments running this year. Weekend Warrior Series. Then we got the Kayak Nationwide Series. Then we got 2 Georgia Series, which is the Georgia Tour Kayak Series, and then the Georgia Public Fishing Area Series. So we're kicking right along in 2025. Thank y'all for watching. Catch you on the next show. Don't know if it's going to be pre-recorded or live. So we'll let everybody know by social media. And as always, fish on, and please wear that PFD while you're on the water.